Hello everyone, and welcome back. Picture this. The sun beats down on the Giza Plateau, a heat so intense it feels solid. You're not a pharaoh, you're not a priest. You're a stonemason, one of thousands dragging behemoth blocks of limestone into place. Your world is dust, sweat, and the rhythmic chant of your overseer. Then it happens, a slip, a grinding crunch, and you look down. A slab of granite has grazed your shin, tearing through skin and muscle. It's a deep, ugly wound, gaping open to the dust-filled air. Infection, in this world, is a death sentence. But you're in luck. The camp's Swoon W, the physician, is making his rounds. You see him approaching, a figure of authority in a clean linen kilt, his leather bag of tools slung over his shoulder. Relief washes over you. He will stitch you up, clean the wound, save your life. He kneels beside you, peers at the injury with a practiced eye, and nods. Then he reaches into his bag. He doesn't pull out a clean strip of linen. He pulls out and from that pot he scoops a thick, greenish, brown paste. He brings it toward your leg, and the smell hits you. It's foul, earthy, reptilian. It's fresh crocodile dung, and he's about to pack it deep into your open wound. This isn't a nightmare. This is medicine, and it's about to get a whole lot weirder. The Nile River Valley, 3,500 years ago. This is a civilization that can align monuments to the stars with breathtaking precision. A culture that can preserve a human body for eternity. They are masters of engineering, astronomy, and bureaucracy. But when it comes to the human body itself, their world is a strange and terrifying landscape, a battlefield where gods and demons wage war for your very soul. To the ancient Egyptians, sickness wasn't a biological process. It was an attack. A malevolent spirit could slip into your ear while you slept, causing a fever. The goddess Sekhmet, with her leoness head and thirst for blood, could unleash a plague upon the land out of sheer fury. Your neighbor, nursing a grudge, could whisper a curse that would wither your limbs. Every ache, every cough, every seizure was the work of an unseen enemy. And so the Egyptian physician had to be more than a doctor. He had to be an exorcist, a magician, a priest. His clinic was not a sterile white room. It was a temple, a workshop, and an apothecary rolled into one. The air would be thick with the scent of burning incense, meant to appease the gods, mingling with the pungent aroma of dried herbs, animal parts, and mineral powders being ground in a stone mortar. His prescriptions, recorded on delicate rolls of papyrus, weren't just lists of ingredients. They were spells, incantations, prayers to be recited as the medicine was prepared and administered. A treatment for a headache might involve rubbing the patient's head with a sacred fish while chanting the names of Horus and Re. A potion to cure indigestion would be drunk at a specific phase of the moon for it to be effective. It's a world that, to our modern eyes, looks like pure, unadulterated superstition. A frantic, desperate attempt to fight the darkness with chants and charms. And when you delve into the details of their pharmacy, the picture gets even more disturbing. It's a catalogue of horrors. We've already met crocodile dung. But what about a paste of ground? Up dead mice, mashed into a pulp and applied to a toothache. Or a draught for a cough, made from donkey testicles, pulverized and mixed with milk. For blindness, they prescribed pouring the blood of a bat into the patient's ear. For a child who wouldn't stop crying at night, the solution was a dose of fly droppings mixed with a mysterious plant called poppy tears. The list goes on, a fever dream of ingredients pulled from the unholiest of places. Human brains, lizard blood, the fat of a hippopotamus, the bile of a turtle. The central mystery we face, looking back through the sands of time, is this: how could the same people who built the pyramids believe that rubbing mouse paste on their gums would do anything other than cause a horrific infection? Were they fools? Were their doctors charlatans, preying on the fears of the sick and desperate? Or is it possible that hidden within this grotesque pharmacopoeia, beneath the layers of magic and religious ritual, there was something else? A glimmer of observation, a flicker of genuine science. Was there a method to this madness? That is the puzzle we are here to solve. We will become medical detectives, sifting through the evidence preserved in their ancient texts, the most famous of which is the Ebers Papyrus. Discovered in the 19th century, this 100-foot long scroll is one of the oldest and most important medical documents in history. It contains over 700 magical formulas and remedies for everything from intestinal worms to a sagging scalp. It is our primary window into this strange world, and it reads like a witch's spell book. Let's take a closer look at what it prescribed. Imagine a young couple in Thebes. They have children, enough to work their small plot of land, and another mouth to feed would be a catastrophe. They seek out a physician for a way to prevent conception. The physician consults his texts and prepares a pessary, a small block of material to be inserted into the woman's body. The active ingredient, crocodile dung, mixed with fermented dough and honey to form a thick, pliable paste. Let's not mince words, this is repulsive. The immediate risk of infection is staggering. But why would they think this works? The logic was likely the crocodile was a symbol of the god Sobek, a creature of immense power and ferocity. It was a terrifying, formidable beast. The thinking might have been that the essence of this fearsome creature, its waste product, would create a hostile, impenetrable barrier within the woman's body, effectively scaring away the possibility of life. It's a potent piece of sympathetic magic. You want to stop something from happening, so you use a substance associated with a creature that can stop anything. But it's not just about magic. The fermented dough would create an acidic environment. The thick, sticky consistency of the honey and dung mixture would act as a rudimentary physical barrier, a sort of proto-diaphragm, and shockingly, crocodile dung is slightly alkaline. Modern spermicides, did they stumble upon a substance that had a genuine, if mild, contraceptive effect? It's unlikely to have been very effective, and the risks were immense. But it wasn't a complete shot in the dark. It was a combination of magical belief and perhaps a sliver of observed, real-world consequence. They were trying something, real-world consequence. They were trying something. In a world without modern dentistry, a severe toothache wasn't just painful, it could be lethal. An abscess could lead to sepsis, a swift and agonizing death. So the stakes were high. You go to the Eston W, your jaw throbbing with a pain that eclipses all thought. He nods knowingly and turns to his assistant, who brings him a small, twitching problem solver, a mouse. The physician kills it, then proceeds to pound its body, bones, fur, organs, and all into a bloody paste, using a mortar and pestle. He might mix in a little fat or honey to improve the consistency. Then, with a wooden spatula, he takes a dollop of this grisly concoction and packs it firmly against your aching tooth and swollen gum. The logic here is almost impossible for us to grasp. There is no obvious scientific reason why a dead mouse would alleviate dental pain. This seems to be a treatment firmly rooted in the world of magic. Some scholars speculate it could be a form of transference magic. The idea was to transfer the pain from your living body into the dead body of the mouse. By placing the dead animal at the site of the pain, you were essentially telling the pain, "Demon, go here, into this lifeless vessel, and leave this living person alone." It's a desperate plea to the supernatural, or perhaps there was another, more practical, if equally grim, idea at play. The pressure of the paste, packed against the gum, might have provided a small amount of temporary relief, and if the tooth was loose, the sticky paste might have helped to hold it in place, reducing the pain from movement. But there's no escaping the fact that this is a truly bizarre and unhygienic prescription. Introducing a decaying rodent into an area likely already teeming with bacteria is a recipe for disaster. This is one of those cases that makes the Egyptian physician look less like a healer and more like a health hazard. And what about the ails of the mind and spirit? The Egyptians believed the heart, not the brain, was the seat of intelligence and emotion. The brain was considered little more than cranial stuffing, something to be unceremoniously scooped out through the nose with a bronze hook during the mummification process. And discarded, yet paradoxically, they had remedies that involved the brain. For an eye ailment, perhaps an early form of cataract, the Ebers Papyrus recommends a mixture made from a pig's eye humours and a human brain. Imagine the process. Sourcing the ingredients alone is a ghoulish task. The physician would have to acquire a human brain, perhaps from a recently deceased person, and mash it into a paste with the fluid from a pig's eye. This concoction would then be poured directly into the patient's ear, in the belief that it would travel through some internal channel to the afflicted eye. This is anatomical nonsense, but it again shows their way of thinking. An eye problem, use parts of an eye. They believed in treating like with like. For a headache, the prescription was even more direct. They would bind a small sacred clay crocodile to the patient's head with a strip of linen on which the names of the gods were written. The idea was that the powerful crocodile's spirit would hunt down and devour the demon that was causing the pain inside the patient's skull. It was a spiritual battle being waged on the patient's skull. This world of Egyptian medicine seems to be sinking deeper and deeper into the realm of the absurd. It's a terrifying landscape of magical thinking, where every cure seems more dangerous than the disease. We have a civilization of brilliant engineers and architects who, when faced with a common cold, would resort to incantations and a poultice made of fly specks. For a splinter, they wouldn't just pull it out, they'd apply a dressing of worm's blood and donkey dung. It feels like we have our answer. The Egyptian physicians were not scientists. They were magicians, their practice a chaotic mess of superstition, placebo, and pure dumb luck. The case seems closed. And then another piece of evidence comes to light. It was found in the same tomb complex as the Ebers papyrus, and it is a very, very different document. It's called the Edwin Smith papyrus, and it changes everything. If the Ebers papyrus is a book of spells, the Edwin Smith papyrus is a field manual for a trauma surgeon. It is pragmatic, methodical, and breathtakingly rational. There are no gods meant. There are almost no spells. It is a document that would not be entirely out of place in a modern emergency room. Written around 1600 BC, it is believed to be a copy of a much older text, possibly from the age of the pyramid builders, 1,000 years earlier. It presents 48 specific cases of physical trauma, mostly injuries a builder or a soldier might receive. It covers wounds to the head, and it is organized with stunning clinical logic. Each case is laid out in the same format. First, the title, for example, Instructions concerning a gaping wound in the head which has penetrated to the bone. Then, the examination. The text instructs the physician on how to palpate the wound, how to probe its depth, how to look for fractures. It is a systematic hands-on diagnostic process. Next comes the diagnosis, where the physician must state one of three things. First, an ailment which I will treat. This is a favorable prognosis. The physician is confident he can help. Second, an ailment with which I will contend. This is a more guarded verdict. The outcome is uncertain. The battle could go either way. And third, the most chilling and honest verdict of all, an ailment not to be treated. This is the physician recognizing the limits of his art. He is looking at a catastrophic mortal wound, perhaps a severe spinal injury or a crushed skull, and saying, I cannot help this person, do not intervene. To do so would be to cause more suffering. This is not the work of a witch doctor. This is the work of an experienced clinician making a difficult triage decision. The treatments described are equally rational. For a simple cut, the papyrus recommends stitching the wound shut with a needle and thread. For a dislocated jaw, it gives precise instructions on how to manipulate the mandible back into place. A technique that is virtually identical to the one used today for a broken arm, it advises immobilizing it with a splint made of wood padded with linen. For a gaping wound, after stitching, it recommends a dressing. And what is that dressing made of? Not crocodile dung, not dead mice. It's a plaster made of honey and grease. Honey, a substance we now know, is a powerful natural antiseptic and antibacterial agent. This is a bombshell. This document proves that alongside the world of magical cures and demonic possession, there existed another, parallel track of Egyptian medicine, a world of keen observation, practical experience, and logical deduction. The Egyptian physician was clearly capable of looking at a broken body and treating it as a mechanical problem, not a spiritual one. He could differentiate between a problem that could be solved with a splint and a problem that was in the hands of the gods. So now our mystery is deeper. We are no longer asking if there was method to their madness. We are asking how two such radically different approaches to medicine could exist side by side, practiced by the same people, sometimes even recorded in the same tombs. How can you be a rational surgeon in the morning, setting a fracture with practiced skill, and a wild magician in the afternoon, chanting spells over a potion of lizard's blood? The answer, it seems, is that the Egyptians didn't see a contradiction. The key lies in the type of ailment. The Edwin Smith papyrus deals almost exclusively with trauma, broken bones, cuts, dislocations. These are injuries with a clear, visible, external cause. You can see the spear that made the wound. You can see the bone jutting out of the skin. For these problems, a practical, mechanical solution makes sense. You stitch the skin, you set the bone, you clean the wound. But what about the other illnesses? The ones from the Ebers papyrus. A raging fever, a persistent cough, a crippling stomach pain, a deep depression. These ailments have no obvious external cause. They seem to come from within, invisible and malevolent. One day you are healthy, the next you are consumed by fire from the inside. This, to the Egyptian mind, could only be the work of the supernatural. A demon has entered your body. A curse has been laid upon you, and you cannot fight a god with a splint. You cannot stitch up a demon. For these internal, invisible diseases, you need a different toolkit. You need spells, amulets, and potions with magical significance. This is where the world of the bizarre pharmacopoeia comes into its own. It's not that they were irrational. It's that they applied a different kind of logic to a different kind of logic to a different kind of problem. This realization allows us to go back to those strange prescriptions, to look at them not as failed science, but as a complex hybrid of magic and proto-science. Let's re-examine the evidence. Let's start with the most important ingredient in the Egyptian medical kit, the one that appeared in both the magical Ebers papyrus and the practical Edwin Smith papyrus. Honey. They used it in wounds, burns, sores, even as a base for mixing other, less savory ingredients. For centuries, modern historians dismissed this as just a sticky placebo, but we now know better. Honey is a medical marvel. It is hygroscopic, meaning it draws moisture out of the environment. When applied to a wound, it dehydrates bacteria, killing them. It is also highly acidic, creating an environment where bacteria cannot thrive. And most remarkably, when honey comes into contact with bodily fluids, an enzyme within it produces small but steady amounts of hydrogen peroxide, the same stuff we use as a disinfectant. The Egyptians had no concept of bacteria or enzymes, but they had eyes. They must have observed, over centuries, that wounds treated with honey healed faster and cleaner than wounds left alone or treated with other things. They saw a result, and they recorded it. They didn't know the why, but they knew the what, and they used it. Now consider another common prescription for wounds and infections: moldy bread. The papyri often instruct the physician to apply a poultice of crumbled, moldy bread directly onto an infected wound. To us, this sounds insane, like deliberately trying to cause sepsis. But think about what moldy bread is. It is a breeding ground for fungi, specifically penicillium fungi, the very source from which Alexander Fleming would, thousands of years later, isolate penicillin, the world's first antibiotic. The Egyptians had stumbled upon a rudimentary form of antibiotic therapy. Again, they had no idea it worked. Perhaps they thought the mold, a symbol of decay, would fight the decay in the wound, or maybe it was just pure, blind observation. Someone, somewhere, at some point in their long history, probably out of desperation, slapped some moldy bread on a festering cut and saw that it helped. The story was passed down, the treatment was recorded, and it became standard practice. They were conducting the world's longest, slowest, and most unintentional clinical trial. Let's look at pain. We scoffed at the dead mouse. But what else did they use? For general aches and pains, a common prescription was a tea made from the bark of the willow tree. For thousands of years, this was considered folklore. Then, in the 19th century, scientists isolated the active ingredient in willow bark. They called it salicin. Today, we call it synthetic derivative aspirin. The ancient Egyptians were using a natural form of one of the most effective pain relievers and anti-inflammatories ever discovered. They saw that chewing on willow bark or drinking a tea made from it eased suffering. They didn't need to know about salicin, they just needed to know that it worked. What about eye problems? Egypt was a terrible place for eyes. The constant glare of the sun, the fine wind-blown sand, and the swarms of flies made eye infections a constant threat. Trachoma, a bacterial infection that leads to blindness, was rampant. One of their signature cultural practices was the use of heavy eyeliner or kohl by both men and women. We see it in all their art. It was made from a mineral called galena, a lead sulfide ground into a fine powder and mixed with fat. We've long thought this was purely cosmetic, a fashion statement. But recent analysis of the residue found in ancient kohl pots has revealed something astonishing. The Egyptians prepared this makeup using a complex, wet chemistry process that resulted in the formation of two specific lead. The process of making the kohl was long and deliberate. Why go to so much trouble? The scientists who made this discovery found that at very low concentrations, these specific lead compounds stimulate the human immune system. They trigger cells to produce a surge of nitric oxide, a molecule that is one of the body's first lines of defense against bacterial infection. In the fly-infested environment of the Nile, wearing this special kohl around your eyes would have acted as a powerful, constantly active prophylactic, warding off the very infections that could lead to blindness. They had invented a form of immune, boosting makeup. It was both a fashion statement and a medical treatment seamlessly integrated. Suddenly, the picture of the Egypt physician is transformed. He is no longer just a magician. He is a keen observer of his environment. He is an herbalist, a pharmacist, a proto-scientist. He is using powerful, effective medicines, even if his explanations for why they work are rooted in magic. The spells and the incantations were not a substitute for the medicine. They were a vital part of it. Think of it from the patient's perspective. The physician gives you a potion that contains willow bark, which genuinely reduces your fever and pain. But he doesn't just hand it to you, he performs a ritual. He chants a spell to banish the fever, demon. He tells you that the power of the god Horus is in this drink. This is the birth of the placebo effect, or more accurately, the meaning effect. The patient's belief in the treatment, their faith in the physician and the gods, would have had a powerful psychological and physiological effect. It would reduce stress, calm the mind, and mobilize the body's own healing resources. The magic wasn't an alternative to the medicine. It was a force multiplier. It made the real active ingredients work even better. This holistic approach, treating the body, mind, and spirit as one interconnected system, is something modern medicine is only now beginning to appreciate. So, where does this leave our most bizarre prescriptions? The crocodile dung, the dead mice, the donkey testicles? It is likely that these were the treatments where the magical thinking was dominant. They were probably used for ailments where their effective medicines had no impact. For contraception, they didn't have a reliable herbal solution. So they turned to powerful sympathetic magic. For a toothache, before they discovered the pain, relieving properties of willow, a magical transference ritual with a mouse, might have been the only thing they could offer. These bizarre cures represent the edge of their knowledge, the point where observation failed them, and they had to rely entirely on faith and magic. But they don't negate the very real and very effective science they were practicing elsewhere. The Egyptian medical system was not one thing. It was a messy, evolving, contradictory mix of genius and nonsense, of brilliant observation and blind superstition. They were pioneers, taking the first steps out of the darkness. They were the first to write down their medical knowledge, to try and pass it on, to build a system. They were the first to perform surgery, the first to have a pharmacy, the first to study anatomy through the process of mummification. They were also the people who thought a dead mouse could cure a toothache. Both things are true. The story of ancient Egyptian medicine is not a simple tale of ignorance versus enlightenment. It is a much more complex and fascinating story about humanity's first great attempt to underbuild machine. They were working without microscopes, without germ theory, without any knowledge of the vast, intricate universe of biology that we now take for granted. All they had was what they could see with their own eyes, what they could touch with their own hands, and the framework of the magical world they inhabited. And with those limited tools, they managed to find antibiotics in moldy bread, aspirin in willow bark, and immune boosters in them. They stitched wounds, set bones, and created a medical tradition that would last for 3,000 years and lay the foundation for the Greek and Roman medicine that followed. So when we look back at that stonemason on the Giza plateau, watching in horror as the physician applies a poultice of crocodile dung to his wound, we should see not just a moment of primitive madness. We should see a moment in a grand, epic struggle. The struggle to heal, to comfort, and to conquer the fear of death. The physician might be wrong about the dung, but he is right to try. He is right to show up, to offer a solution, to bring the full weight of his culture's knowledge, both magical and practical, to bear on this one man's suffering. It is a messy, sometimes grotesque, but ultimately heroic beginning to the long and still unfinished story of medicine. That is all for today. If you enjoyed this journey into the strange and surprising world of ancient medicine, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.